Well, that brings us back maybe to sexual aberrations again. There seem to be a lot of Jack the Ripper types in various films.
Well, they are aberrations by the fact that outwardly they're acceptable members of society. And in the picture Frenzy, I get to go to some extent in a scene between a doctor and a lawyer to explain that fact, that outwardly they're normal, apparently decent human beings. And then, quote, it comes over them, unquote.
You do use humor. Do you think that that plays a kind of relief from the building up of suspense?
You'll always need it.
You know, you can't
it's like
just
a bomb situation. If you have the bomb, you must never let it go off, because if you created suspense with the audience, then you must relieve it.
For instance, I think in the 39 Steps, when Madeleine Carroll is in the train compartment, and she gives the hero away after you feel she's not going to.
Oh, well, that's true. Wouldn't you, if a man burst into the apartment? In the movies, of course, she'd return the embrace, you see. But then I don't believe what they do in movies is always correct. I'm a believer in humor. I mean, who wants to fill a film always with, you know, heavy going? It's like the poor housewife, you know. And those pictures that are heavy-handed, I call them sink-to-sink pictures. Because here's the poor housewife washing dishes at the sink. The husband returns from work, looks at this slightly forlorn figure and says, look, dear, why don't you dry your hands, go up and put on a nice, clean dress, yeah, we'll get a sitter, and we'll go out and have dinner and take in the movie. And she said, that'll be wonderful. Takes her apron off, goes upstairs, they get the babysitter, they go out, they have dinner, he parks the car, they go in the movie, and she sits and looks at the screen, and what does she see? A woman washing dishes at the sink. Yet they make those movies, you know? I mean, the sink symbolizes the kind of heavy-handed movie that's made. Sometimes I made them myself under certain circumstances, but who wants to?
What about in North by Northwest? That also
Well, that's a
also
fantasy, you know.
And what about the humor that's in North by Northwest? Can you describe a little bit the various things that you use
well,
there?
I mean, there's the humor of Cary Grant being made drunk and goes on a wild ride in a car, you know. And there's a certain amount of wit on the part of he and the girl, so forth.
Let's get back to suspense again. Can you describe a little bit the build-up of suspense in Spellbound?
Well, in Spellbound, you start, of course, with a mysterious figure. Spellbound was based on a novel, which we didn't use. It was called The House of Dr. Edwards. And it was the story of a doctor taking a patient to a mental institution. Although I never used it in the film, I wanted one of the men in the dining car of the train, and he saw a fly crawling across, to take the fly and put the wings off. And the other man said, oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. You know, and the point was I didn't know which was the crazy man who pulled the wings off, the doctor or the patient. And we abandoned that idea, and I worked with Ben Hecht on it, and we started the story of the new doctor who came into the institution and fell in love with a female doctor, and gradually he began to have sort of weird reactions to lines, whether they were made by a fork on a tablecloth or the lines on the robe of the woman he'd fallen in love with. But gradually, of course, it in a way was a mystery But it was a mystery with certain overtones of psychiatry in it, you see. And it was almost like examining a patient under psychiatric terms, that the mystery was solved. It was really a mystery story, but of course a fresh approach to it.
What about Strangers in the Train? The cutting back and forth between the lighter that's lost.
Ah, well, that was when he threatens. He threatens eventually, because the nice man won't carry out his part of the so-called bargain, because a bargain was never made. The hero was a tennis player, so that the villain, the weird guy, was on the way to the scene of the crime and was going to plant a piece of evidence which would make the hero definitely the murderer of his wife. But unfortunately, the hero was occupied with a tennis match. And I always remember when we shot the long shots at Forest Hills, and they were Davis Cup matches. And I said, would you mind having that thing removed, please? It's in the way, the Davis Cup. So they took it away for me, and then we did this whole tennis match. And of course, the moment the match was over, he dashed after the other man.
Through the years, you've achieved a great deal of fame and success. Do you like your fame? Does it give you a certain amount of pride?
Well, it enables me to sleep at night.
You're making a joke of the question, but...
No, I'm not making a joke.
Does
I
it,
don't
I
know,
mean...
really. Hard question to answer, because...
I mean, does it ever make you feel happy or proud to arrive at an airport and have cameramen and reporters and people there to greet you?
Some little things like that are nice. I remember once arriving at Tel Aviv and coming down the steps and having the whole airport applaud. Well, that was very nice. And once I was standing in the middle of the square at Copenhagen, and it's a very large square, and the roadway, there's an intersection, and suddenly I heard the sound of an ambulance siren screaming. It came from the far corner of the square. I was just standing there, no camera or anything, with an assistant, and suddenly this ambulance stops at the intersection. A man jumped out, came rushing toward me, said, "Autograph, please." I gave him the autograph. He rushed back to the ambulance. They started the siren, and he went on his way.
Who was it?
That's what I don't know. I don't even know whether the autograph was for the patient or the driver.